You're listening to the Author Inside You podcast, a weekly podcast designed to motivate you to finish writing a book, choose a publisher, and have your work build an audience. Keep listening if you're looking to get propelled into the next chapter of your life. And now, it's the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.
Hello and welcome to the Author Inside You podcast. I'm Matt Rafferty.
And I'm Leah Rafferty.
Joining us today is Brenda Cortez, author of My Mom is Having Surgery, a kidney story. Brenda's experiences have sparked her passion to make a difference in the lives of children through her children's literature, while educating them about organ donation and how it helps others. Welcome, Brenda. Thanks for joining us today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, Brenda, can you tell us a little bit about your donation process?
Sure, yeah, mine was 14 years ago, so I feel like I'm like one of the old ones already. For me, it was just hearing of another mom that I was talking with. Our kids were in school together, and that she needed a kidney, and so that's how it all started for me, that I'd never had thought about, or I don't even think I knew anything about like being a living donor.
Wow.
So
you just jumped right in then.
Pretty much, I literally did. I just said, what do you need? Yeah, what do you need to be or do? And she's like, the blood type. She needed an O person. And I'm like, that's me. Okay, what do I have to do?
Wow.
And at that moment, I literally felt that I would be her match. So
wow.
Found out a couple months later that I was.
Oh, very generous of you. Very nice.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So can I ask a question? So what happens? So when you donate an organ, who pays for that? Does your insurance pay, or how does that work?
The recipient's insurance pays for it.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay. So that is more of an incentive for people if they were worried about insurance purposes.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Yep.
That's great. Good to know.
And so how did that lead to writing your first book?
So my kids at the time were in second grade and fifth grade. So my son was second, my daughter was in fifth grade. Fast forward then to my daughter is a senior in high school, and she wrote her essay to get into college and wrote about the kidney donation, how it was scary, but I inspired her to want to be a better person and help others.
That's great.
So that made me look back at it all. And there really weren't any resources for them, and that maybe I should come up with something to help kids going forward.
Great.
And so that's how it started.
And then what was the writing process like? Did it just come to you like all at once?
Yeah, I was literally sitting at a mall. My brother had like a kiosk, and it was the beginning of the Christmas shopping season, and it was like a weeknight, and it was dead. So I had my notebook, and I had the idea and wrote down the very first draft, pretty much all of it that night, but it evolved a lot from there.
Right. So then take us through the process. So after you had the draft written, then what did you do?
So then I typed it up. I shared it with a couple of friends and my mom, and I'm like, what do you guys think about this? Got some feedback and realized that I really needed to work on my writing. Kind of redid it, and I learned a lot from it. I mean, I always enjoyed just like casual writing or making up poems, but I was like, okay, I really need to look into this and do research, and started paying attention to other children's books and comparing. So then in the middle of that, I had seen a local news story about a lady that wrote a children's book. And so she was interviewed and talked about her book. And so I was like, I need to remember her name and her book. And when I'm ready to, get this book published, I'm going to look her up.
Right.
And so that's exactly what I did then. Found out that she had used a company that was basically for beginner publishers. It's like, okay, well, that's me. I didn't expect that my book would all of a sudden, be published by some big
right.
big house. I didn't have that expectation. And my book was really for a purpose, to help kids that, have someone going through surgery, and even more specific, kidney donation. So I sent my manuscript then into this company long story short, it wasn't a fun process. That company, well, they're no longer in business, and now I know why.
Oh.
But
Oh, that's too bad.
but I learned from it. Honestly, I'm okay with that, because a lot of times that's how you learn and that's how you grow. I did reach out to that lady I saw in the news to ask her questions.
And how was she? Was she receptive to your questions?
Yeah, I think she maybe was a little skeptical at first. I was asking some pretty in-depth questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, yeah. I mean, we're friends now. It was a good thing. I honestly say a lot of this was really, all of it was like meant to happen.
Well, yeah, we believe that it's okay to some people are afraid to reach out to people. Like you might be bugging them or they don't want, but that's not true. Most people do want to help others. I mean, there are people who don't want to help, and that's fine, but you have to at least try. It's a no until you try, right? So that's good. Reach out, people, and I'm sure most people will help.
I think most people don't have someone reaching out to them very often. So I think if somebody is contacting you about something that you know about, right? And obviously she has some passion for writing books, or she wouldn't have written that children's book. I think deep down she was probably happy that you called her so that she can share what she knows. Yep,
I think so. She was in the process of publishing her second book with them.
Great.
So we were kind of in the same boat together a little bit. And, she was sharing with me then as the process was going along that it was very different from the first book for her. So honestly, I learned from that whole experience that part of it is you need to be careful. And I was careful, but then you get what you pay for certain things too. It was good and it was bad. There was definitely some good things about it. I was able to get my book, done at an affordable price. The illustrations were probably, one of the best things about the book. I took the opportunity when they actually went out of business. The owner and his son, it was supposed to be this Christian company, and they went to jail for embezzlement.
Oh, no. That's horrible.
Yeah. I know.
Oh, jeez.
But then the authors were given the opportunity to own their entire book.
Oh.
So I had just owned my story, but not my illustrations.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it all worked out. So for a small fee, I was able to get the whole thing. And then I took the opportunity to put out a revised version then. So I revised it, had it professionally edited, and felt more comfortable about it. And I had read the book at a bunch of different school visits. So once I had read it out loud like that many times, I knew, a couple of things that I wanted to revise. So that worked out well. And then the illustrator who had done the illustrations for that book, I didn't know who he was. That company didn't, share that information.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, but he found me then and let me know that he was the one that did my illustrations, and if I was, going to do any books in the future to keep him in mind. So I was like, oh, okay. And at the time I didn't have any future books, but I was like, well, I'll keep it in mind in case. And then not too long after, then the next book idea actually came about. And so he has been my illustrator now since then. So
that's great. It's good he reached out to you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
definitely.
When did you get the idea, I'm going to write another book?
Well, so people had said that my first book, they're like, oh, that's a really great book, like for children's hospitals. You should get it in the children's hospitals. But I actually disagreed with them. And I said, no, that one's actually meant for the adult hospitals to give out to help the kids of those adult patients.
Sure, so they understand what's going on.
Yep. I mean, I guess you could, okay, the mom's going through it, but then maybe if you're the child going through it, you could relate a little bit. But I was like, I think I should just really write something that they can really relate to. So I wanted to have a cute character for them as well. Because in my first book, I wrote it from my daughter's perspective. So it was, it's kind of based on a real story, and we were the characters. But I just thought I wanted to do something just cuter, like with a cute animal. First, I came up with actually a saying, which is help others with love. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, hey, that spells out howl, Howl, and rhymes with owl, and I like owls. So
very cool.
I was like, he should be my character, Howl the Owl.
Yeah.
And then he can share his message of what his name stands for. So, and then just kind of the tie-in with organ donation too, that's like the ultimate helping others.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. That's true.
So I decided that, I should pick an organ for him to get a transplant. And so I picked a heart. And it's kind of loosely because of a friend sharing with me that her nephew had a heart transplant.
Oh, wow.
I was like, yeah, the title sounds good. Howl gets a heart.
Great.
So that's how he came about. And now it's a whole series of Howl the Owl books.
Great. And you have those in hospitals?
Yeah, some. Yeah, there's definitely some children's hospitals that are using that book, some adult hospitals that are using the first book. So I'm honored that it's, serving its purpose as far as that. And then just for people that are either affected by it somehow, a lot of siblings, even if it's a different kind of transplant, it's still similar.
It's
Sure.
scary, yeah, for everyone involved, I'm sure.
Why don't we talk about marketing and what you're doing to market your books?
And marketing, luckily for me, marketing is my background.
Oh,
The first thing that I really thought of was I wanted to align myself with a foundation where I could donate some proceeds back that aligned with, my topic, organ donation. And so I picked Donate Life America. Each state has like a Donate Life or their organ procurement group.
Sure.
But I didn't want to feel like I was limiting myself. It's like just in Wisconsin or somewhere. So that's why I picked the national group of
Okay.
Donate Life America.
and then I saw that your book gives $1 to the organization. Am I correct?
Yep, $1, or some of the books might only be 50 cents because I might split that dollar with another group.
Well, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So 2 groups can be helped. That's wonderful. What
Yes.
a nice idea that you did that. That's wonderful.
Well, thank you. 2 reasons for that is I wanted, to give back and help support, but I wanted it to also, help potentially with future marketing efforts. I was lucky. I was the first author that basically partnered with Donate Life America. And so I kind of started something new for them.
Yeah, that's exciting for both of you.
Yeah. I have my webpage. I still do for now. It's part of their webpage.
Oh.
So I also felt that it gave me credibility
Sure. Yeah, good idea.
with my efforts. So, I feel that that's worked out well and just given me an opportunity to help them obviously as well.
Now, you mentioned prior to us recording that you're going to New Jersey next summer. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Also part of the marketing efforts. Well, one of the new things for me this year is I have a mascot for my character, Howl the Owl.
That's fun.
So I was at the transplant games last summer. They were in Salt Lake City, Utah. So this is an event that takes place every 2 years in a different city. The first time I went, they were actually in Cleveland in 2016.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And
Our hometown.
Yeah. Too bad we didn't know you
Yeah,
then.
yeah.
right. It's a pretty cool event. On average, so far, maybe like 7,000 people attend.
Wow.
And it's like a 5-day event of kind of like mini Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
After attending the first year in Cleveland, my first year, and I had only had my very first book at the time, but then I had 2 more books by the time the games came around last year. So I had asked if I would be able to have a table. I also wanted to be a presenter, and I think that's how I actually proposed it to the transplant games, to get a little exposure for my books. And they said, well, honestly, the best exposure would be for me to have a booth.
Okay.
And so they wanted me to have a booth, and I was honored, and it was a great thing. And so I'm definitely planning, that's my audience. So you want to talk about marketing.
Yeah.
If a lot of my books are, really just about organ donation. There's a couple that focus more on the kindness and helping others, which is the message of Howl.
And then tell us about your mascot.
He basically looks like, so he's also, I also have a plush character.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Do you
I
sell?
forgot to mention that part.
So you sell stuffed animals or?
Yes.
Oh,
yes. So
great.
he is a stuffed animal. So instead of like a book and a bear, you get a book and an owl if you want. And so the mascot looks like the stuffed animal. And so his signature thing is he wears a T-shirt, a white T-shirt, and it says his name, Howl, and it says help others with love.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah, people are able to recognize him, or a lot of times I feel like people don't really know who he is, but now they're learning who he is.
That's great. Yeah.
And then I've got bookmarks made up to hand out as well when I'm, going around with. I've dressed up as the owl a couple times, but otherwise I really need someone else to do it because I need to be there as like the author.
Sure. But in the summer, it might be difficult to find someone to dress up as an owl.
Yeah, it can be a little bit hot. Yeah. That's for sure.
And so then at the games, you're there for all 5 days with a booth? I mean, that is great. That's nice that you have that much exposure, that it's not just one day. That's fantastic.
And also that you get to meet the people who will be reading your book must be nice also. And they must enjoy meeting you because you actually wrote a book about your life, which has to be nice.
Yep, it was very nice, to meet the people, and they got to meet me. And then the other cool thing was, so the second Howl book that I wrote actually ended up being about a family that I had met at the Cleveland transplant games, and a little girl, Bella, and her parents. And actually 2 months after the games, Bella's daddy passed away and became a donor. And while it's a sad topic, it was something that I knew I wanted to write about because, there needs to be something to at least help these kids understand and like kind of relate. So I try to really do a positive spin. Of course, you address the sad issue that, daddy died, but he was like a superhero and he saved other people's lives. The little girl, Bella, and her mom, they were very honored that I did the book. I asked them, obviously, their permission and everything. But so whenever they were able to, they were in the booth with me as well. And then Bella would, sign her book, print her name.
Oh, so that's wonderful.
It was a neat experience for everybody.
Right.
And it also keeps their dad's memory alive. That's nice. That's wonderful.
Mm-hmm. So that book has been used by some OPOs, which that stands for Organ Procurement Organization.
Oh, okay.
So I've had the opportunity to meet with a couple different ones, like on vacation, certain travels. I've been lucky that Nevada Donor Network, they bought a bunch of books and actually had me come and sign them and hand them out to people at their donor remembrance ceremony.
Oh, that's very nice.
Yeah. And then I've had people, share the book. So there's a Facebook page for, just Howl the Owl. And then there's a littler version of my plush guy. And he's been traveling the world.
Oh.
And there's a special page for him for his travels. And it's called Howl the Owl on the Prowl.
Oh, that's great.
That's very cool.
Like the Flat Stanley, I remember.
Exactly.
Yeah. How fun. Yeah. That's great.
Well, we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Okay.
So everyone can check on that.
Yeah, where is he?
Right. Scribophile is the proud sponsor of the Author Inside You podcast.
Looking for ways to improve your writing? Scribophile is the place for you. Scribophile is famous for the detailed and helpful critiques their members exchange. The critiques are so much more than just giving each other a pat on the back. You'll actually receive information that will help you improve your writing. As part of their community, you'll be writing critiques for others also. Their members tell them again and again that learning how to write great critiques dramatically improve their own writing.
At Scribophile, you can learn from the vast collection of free writing resources. Besides the insightful critiques you'll get in the writing workshop, Scribophile has a huge amount of free resources in the professional Writing Blog and Writing Academy. Their writing forums are busy with thousands of writers from all over the world talking shop.
Scribophile is also a great place to make lifelong friends in the busy community of writers. Although writing is a solitary act, that doesn't mean you have to be lonely. Lucky for you, there are thousands of writers on Scribblefile every day, and they're really a friendly bunch.
You've never seen a writing group like this one at scribblefile.com. So Brenda, a while ago you mentioned about reading your book out loud in front of schools. How did you go about finding schools that you could read in front of?
Some were like connections that I had. Others were, myself like reaching out and, letting them know what I had to offer. And there's actually a couple different things that I present on. So, calling it an author visit. And then I've done some libraries. But one of the things was there's a local radio group. They have 3 different stations, and they will interview anybody. Basically, it's like almost like a PSA time frame, and they air them on Sunday mornings.
Okay.
So I've gotten to be on that program a couple different times.
Great.
And so the most recent one, which was actually like almost a year ago, that I did, I was like, okay, how am I going to know that people are actually listening? And so I had my newest book, which was about kindness and helping others, called Howl Helps Others. And so I put it out there if people wanted to nominate like their school, like their class.
Oh, sure.
If it was a mom or whoever that wanted to nominate their child's class, or it said if you're a teacher, you can nominate yourself. And so they just needed to email me. So
then you got the feedback.
Yeah.
Direct feedback.
So I got to practice and, do my presentation then and go and visit a couple schools. So there's a few different ways, but mostly it is just reaching out to them, either phone call or email, and letting them know what I have to offer as far as, the little bit older kids, talking about organ donation. There's a school that's had me come back 4 years in a row already for they call it STEAM Day. So it's kind of like STEM Day.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
the A's
they
for
treat
arts or?
Yep. So
Okay.
science, technology, engineering, art, and math.
Okay.
So yeah, they throw in the art. So they have me for 5th grade science. I start by reading my very first book about being a living donor. And then I have 45 minutes with each class. And then varies, either it's 4 or 5 classes that I present to.
Wow.
Not together, but separately.
It's a long day.
Yeah.
It is. It's a lot of talking. But the kids they're really intrigued about organ donation. So I basically have a PowerPoint presentation. I have my illustrations up on there. So when I'm reading, they can see it versus, just trying to show my tiny book. Yeah, all my different slides about what organs can be donated. And sometimes I'll, depending on either that school or where I'm at, also talk about my writing process. So I've been doing a lot of different things, and it almost depends on what the school wants too.
Sure. All right. So now you've been a kidney donor. You wrote multiple books, and now you also own your own company?
Yeah. So a year ago, I decided that I probably needed to start my own business, since everything was growing. I created then BC Books LLC. And I had consulted with another author who we were actually at the transplant games together. He wrote an adult book. And so we had compared a lot of notes, and, he was taking that next step. I said, yeah, that probably makes sense that I should do that as well.
And what is the next step? Just starting a business?
Yep.
Okay,
yep,
not just starting a business. Excuse me. All right.
To actually have it be an official business. Okay. And then I'm also working on trademarking.
Oh, great idea.
Some of my stuff. And so then that's owned by, the business. It's not technically owned by the company name. Sometimes people do think it's like a publishing company, but for now it's only my books.
Okay, great.
Excellent. So, Brenda, what about advice for somebody who's thinking about writing a children's book? What kind of advice would you have for someone listening?
And I've actually had a lot of people ask, and as we kind of talked about earlier, that I'm actually honored when people ask me. And again, everybody's experience is different, but I would say go for it. Share your story. One of the things that, I've said to some of the schools that I've gone to and I've focused more on the writing is just get your ideas down. Put it down like fast and furious. And I even bring them my notebook and show them what it looks like, how I start.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I know that my process is different too than the lady that I had reached out to that I had seen on the news. Marla is her name. She doesn't like handwrite. She starts it all on the computer.
Oh, okay.
And so I know when I had shared with her, she's like, "Oh, that's how you do it?" I'm like, "Yeah." So it's just interesting there. But for me, I write at that point, I'm writing sloppy. I'm abbreviating, but I know it's almost like shorthand in a way.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's already evolving once I start typing it out on the computer. So I'm already like starting, the first round of edits and changing things. So, but I would say just write it. And especially if you really have a purpose for it, there's so many different options available now to get a book out that it's easier. For me, with reaching out to Marla, she had tried the traditional route for a bunch of years and it was very challenging. She didn't have any luck with it, and so she went this other route. And I always say I feel like she saved me a bunch of years.
It was great. It was great reaching out.
Definitely.
So speaking of reaching out, how can somebody who's listening reach out to you?
They can check out the website, which is howltheowl.com, and then you can email me directly to Brenda@howltheowl.com. And then there's the Facebook pages that we referred to.
Sure.
You can always message. People have messaged me. But if they don't remember the email, you can click on to email me right from the web page.
Great.
howltheowl.com.
Great. Your email address and webpage will be in our show notes.
Great. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Brenda, very much for taking the time to speak with us today. We appreciate your time.
I appreciate the opportunity to share my story and how everything got started and how Howl the Owl was born.
We know you have your favorite episode of the Author Inside You podcast, and we ask you to please consider sharing it with your friends.
An easy way to do it would be to send your friends an email and include theauthorinside.you.com.
Until next time.
Right on.
Thank you for listening to the Author Inside You podcast with your host, Leah and Matt Rafferty.